He takes what many have seen and recreates it on canvas in a way that doesn't seem possible, ignoring the boundaries we live within and exploring only what others have imagined, molding wildlife into a form that lives on forever. On today's edition of Art Now, we'll look at the work of Harry Breen.
Hello, welcome to Art Now, a show where we talk to artists whose work is a part of our community. I'm Ginny Waaler, and I'll be your host. Well, welcome to Art Now. Our guest today is Harry Breen.
Good afternoon or evening.
You have lived, taught, made sculptures and paintings in Champaign-Urbana for most of your life. Tell us a little bit about...
Part of it anyway. I've been here for close to 60 years.
Okay.
And I've been painting and sculpting for that period of time. Originally from Chicago.
Right. Born
in Chicago, raised in Chicago. My school in Chicago finished my undergraduate work. After completing a couple of years in liberal arts, I decided to go to school at the Art Institute, where I got my undergraduate degree in art education with a major in painting and printmaking, drawing. And after teaching I taught 1 year at the Art Institute in Saturday classes, and then moved down to Gary, Indiana, where I taught in the public schools for 3 years, grades 4 through 12, all in the same building. It was quite an experience. And at the end of my second year, I got an offer to come down here to teach at Uni High. Mm-hmm. And I was doing very well up, and I painted the sand dunes, loved the dunes. And always been predominantly a landscape painter. Never saw a landscape I didn't like to paint. And so then my wife and I decided, well, we won't go down, let's continue on, since I was doing well, prizes and shows. But then the third year, I got another offer to come down here at Uni High. So I thought, well, I needed a graduate degree, so I accepted that. Taught at Uni High 2 years, then was offered a position in the faculty art department, which was very nice. And I had anticipated that, but it was, so I was in the art department for 29 years. I'm retired. I'm now professor emeritus. It means I'm a retired professor. And during that time, in addition to my regular academic schedule, I was very active in the studio. And primarily with painting early on. Mm-hmm. Illinois Prairie. Mm-hmm. The prairie turned me on the way the landscape did in northern Illinois and northern Indiana. You know, so I like big skies, big fields. Yeah.
Well, it shows in your work, all the nature, that you love nature. And you love the skies and the fields and the distance and everything that you do. You just get this real sense of how beautiful nature is. I think you express that so well.
Well, in the nature here, to me, I remember when I first started showing, we'd go to faculty functions, and people from the east and the west coast would downgrade the landscape.
Right.
Downgrade it. You know, what have you got? You know, there's no mountains, there's no ocean. We've got this marvelous space and those gorgeous skies and all the textures. So I asked them, have you ever gotten out of your car or gotten in your car and gone on one of the country roads and gotten out of your car and walked around?
Right.
No. Try it sometime.
Right, exactly.
And I got a few converts. And I've had people call me like at 10 o'clock at night, there's a Harry Breen sky, you ought to go out.
Yeah, right.
So that's the ultimate compliment.
Well, I think that a lot of your paintings that you did were of the landscape that you're talking about and the wonderful details that you did on them. And so we will see some of those. And then also, as time's gone by, you've enhanced that and changed some of those landscape paintings. And so we have some of those here that we can talk about now, how your style has changed and almost made it three-dimensional, or it is three-dimensional now.
Well, there was a period there when I actually did model with clay and combine the clay and the painting so kind of a fool the eye, and it was kind of a shallow relief that was painted. People are familiar with the mural at Presence Hospital or at Holy Cross. My murals at Holy Cross combine that technique. But I've always been interested in space, creating the illusion of space on a two-dimensional plane. And the problems, I think, for any serious artist are formal. I'm representational, and you know what it looks like something, but beyond that, it has these elements, these abstract elements, which are very important, space being one of them. And so I've played with that. I can do it with the traditional, I can do with aerial perspective and linear perspective and color and overlapping. But beyond that, something like that, to break that picture plane and come out with that. So that's when I started doing some modeling with clay and then painting, doing a combination of sculpture and painting. And then these recent ones called Menagerie Out of Bounds happened almost by accident or serendipity, whatever you want to call it. Artists play, and that's part of being an artist, I guess. And I bought these frames for a series of paintings I did of Tuscany. We were in Tuscany about 8 years ago. That's a whole other story. But the frames looked terrible on the paintings of Tuscany. The gold was too bright, the frames were too big. So I had these 12 big frames sitting in the basement. And I tried antiquing them or to tone down the gold, and still didn't work. Well, just, again, serendipity, I don't know, accident, whatever. I was doing a painting of corn, and it just so happened to be the same size as the frame. So I put that corn in the frame, and it worked. The frame looked good on the corn, but it wasn't balanced. So I took some stalks outside onto the frame, and the minute I did that, of course, I had to balance that with something else. So I dropped some corn cobs at the lower part, and then I put some crows up in the corner, and pretty soon it was out of bounds. And so that suggested a possibility for the other frames. And so then I deliberately started playing with that concept. So then the clouds move out, and the corn, the landscape extends out beyond the frame, which to me, it moves the landscape out to real space.
Right.
And I love playing with that illusion. I work in a very detailed way. It's a representational way. So it gets to be kind of fun, like this one painting here of the end of the line with the two fence posts, and over on the one side you get the corn, standing corn, and you can look, if you go outside the frame, you can walk down
exactly.
the road. And then on the other hand, you go way back, and there's a little tiny white dot way on the horizon over here. What is a corn crib, a house, and way on the horizon.
Right over there, right there.
So you get this play of space, and the clouds move out of that space. And then the one that's called Illinois Prairie, or the tall grass prairie on the way home. Tall grass prairie, get it? Corn is grass. It's a kind of a commentary, tongue in cheek.
I think I should be sure to mention that these paintings are now being exhibited in the Green Street Gallery, which is located at the Techline Company, which is on Locust Street in Champaign. Techline Company is a company that designs living and office spaces, and also is an art gallery. So your most recent paintings are here, including these, Illinois, Out of Bounds. And some of these that are in here, I love them because they've got the crows coming and going, and you get this, and the clouds also kind of coming and going. So you get this great sense, three-dimensional sense from these paintings.
I like birds, because birds define space. they move out from an empty sky. So I like, that's just another spatial device.
It's just terrific, and there's a lot of them in this gallery, and so it's fun to see them all. So this is a wonderful new style that you've developed. So we have another painting here behind us that maybe you would like to tell us a little bit about, Harry.
We had property down in far southern Illinois in North Polk County. Lovely. We were surrounded by national forests. We were right on the edge of a wilderness area, and this was our farm pond. and I did a number of paintings of that country. We no longer have the property. It was a little remote for my wife, but anyway, while I was down there, I did a number of things that are based on the country. And this is called
Opening Day?
Opening Day. Okay, thank you. And it's the pond is frozen over. It's November, and if you look way off in the distance, there are two tiny red orange dots. The hunters out.
I see them.
You know, so but again, you know, I like to play with that space, the pattern, the repetition of the forms,
exactly.
And then the ice glazing over. All those they're formal challenges, you know, and again, artists like to play. You know, can I do this? Can I make it work?
Exactly.
I'm pleased with what happens here.
Yeah. Well, it's very nice. I like it a lot. And I love that reflection of the water and the trees and the clouds and the water, too. It's just tremendous. Showing the changing season there in November. It's a very nice one.
Again, the space, looking through.
Right.
The overall is two-dimensional, but you're creating this illusion of the third dimension.
Yeah, exactly. It's tremendous. Well, speaking of three-dimension, you've done a lot of work with animals, sculpting animals, and you have some wonderful ones here, and you have a great sense of humor that goes along with your animals.
Well, that was kind of almost a fluke. I collect ceramics, antique ceramics, a lot of Chinese porcelains, and only trouble is I never worked with clay. So some years back in the early 60s, Don Frith, we had a really good crafts department, and Don was a lot of people know who Don Frith is. I wanted to learn how to throw a pot. Well, I didn't learn how to throw a pot. My pots were not consistent with my standards of what a pot should be, but I like the clay, the plasticity of clay. It's like paint, you know, push it around. So I thought, well, I'm going to hand build something, you know, like you pinch pots in school or whatever, make snakes, coils, so I asked my wife, you know, I'm going to make an animal. I've always been interested in natural history, animals of one kind or other. She would make a rhinoceros. So I made this rhinoceros. And it was quite an effort to get it together, and I really did with some help from Don. And we fired it, and it's big. Turned out big. My son Paul now owns it. And since then I've done 5 other rhinoceroses. That's number 6. So, but I've done all kinds. I had a friend, a good friend, who loved the garden. I love the garden, and she said, "I want you to make a unicorn for Marvin's garden out of Thurber." And I was like, "I'm not a sculptor." She said, "Yes, you make me a unicorn." Well, I relented. I did, and I told her to call Frank Gallo. That was way back when. And no, I want you to do it. So I did make the unicorn, and then one thing led to another, and I've just done a whole menagerie of animals. I've done, you name it, aardvarks and anteaters, you know, all kinds of them.
And I see you have some cats here too.
Cleopatra, she's our current cat. And one of our former cats is over there, and there's some cats in a tree over there. Yeah. So and so behind you, I think there's a pair of chickens. It's either a pair of chickens or one undecided chicken, and that's my most recent thing. My granddaughter has a pottery in Alton. She and her husband. I was down there visiting, so I worked in a pottery and made the animal. And there's some plates that I decorated with chickens that my granddaughter threw. So
it's a wonderful combination. But I like this one, the 2 chickens, and it's entitled "Which Way." So they can't make up their minds. But you have some other wonderful pieces in the gallery here that I know people will want to come and see. There's a couple of cats resting up on top of a plate, sort of, that's being held up by 4 owls. 2 cats and 4 owls. In a tree. So you have a lot of interesting pottery here and a lot of interesting paintings. And I think it's tremendous what a variety of style you have.
Just an aside, as far as artists go. My wife died 4 years ago, and I've always been very active in the studio. I was just turned off. I couldn't do anything. A year went by, I didn't do anything, stare out the window. Well, I got a call from somebody in Rockford, Illinois, who had seen a painting of mine in the Cranard Art Museum back in the early 60s. And it was a road with a stop sign, dead-ended in a cornfield with a big sky. Could I do that for him? He said he coveted that painting, and he even knew who bought it.
Really?
And I thought, well, isn't that something from the 60s? So I did the painting for him. It broke the ice.
That's
and
great.
So this is all kind of a result of that.
That's great.
Yeah, it's interesting how that happened.
Yeah.
Just from the 60s. So.
Do you have some more ideas of things you want to do now that you have this Illinois Prairie out of bounds?
Yeah.
Another whole series of additional paintings, different style?
But it was interesting when we talked about Tuscany and the difference in the landscapes. So, when I taught in Wisconsin for a year, the landscape there had appeal. The landscape in northern Indiana had an appeal. The Tuscan landscape was wonderful too. But it is a sculpted landscape, 2,500 years of agriculture. Beautiful, the vineyards and the olive groves, but still all the wild areas that they've left, And I said it was like, spatially, it was like foreground, middle ground, middle ground, middle ground, middle ground, then the whole thing faded off into space.
Exactly.
It was
and then there's sort of some mountains back there too, aren't they, at the back of the scene? Yeah. So I think those Tuscany paintings are very interesting, how they're very detailed at first.
Well, all my stuff is.
And then
it's just the way I work,
Yeah.
It's kind of, it should have an overall appeal, boom, when you first look at it, but I like to draw people in. And people want to know where the crickets are, where's the grasshoppers? Well, I haven't done that yet, but I suppose I'm not above it.
There you go. Well, you have a lot of paintings here, and I know people would love to come down here to Techline to see these paintings. And also, you have a website. People go on your website, and
It's got a lot of stuff.
It has a lot of things, and it shows paintings that are available. If people want to own some of your paintings, that would be a terrific way to find out what you have available.
The thing, I guess, I've overlooked is my work in churches. I've done, back in '82, the pastor of Holy Cross, where I was a parishioner, asked me to take on the design of the renovation, which was a remarkable commission. I mean, I had the whole thing, I was a guide carte blanche. I had carte blanche. So it was kind of, I dealt with concepts. There are people who could realize my concepts. So I learned about working with marble and all kinds of things.
Right.
I do the designs, then somebody could do it.
Right.
And so I did 2 major murals, redesigned the sanctuary furniture, and as a result of that, I did several other churches, 2 cathedrals, and so who knows where one's career is going? How it was kind of amazing to me.
Did I read that you received an award from the Pope?
Oh yeah. Back in '93, Diane and I received I can say this in Latin, et pontifice, et ecclesia pontifice, for the church and the Pope.
Oh.
It's kind of the highest honor that a layman, the Pope, can confer on lay people. So that was a great honor, and we had a chance to meet him. I presented him with a painting. That was John Paul II. And then later we were invited to have Mass in his chapel, private chapel. And that was extraordinary. I was intrigued. Here you're in this place where all these paintings, and the Medici probably rode their horses up these steps. and in leaving, the Swiss Guard kind of follow you. And they don't push you. You can take your time. You go down the steps, but you can't go back.
Okay.
You're out, down and out.
Exactly. Yeah. But what an honor. Who would ever imagine that you would have that experience? It's just tremendous.
Likewise. Yeah. And again, the Holy Cross thing was, other churches too, it was a great experience, but it got to the point where committees got to be too much.
Oh.
I didn't have any committees at Holy Cross.
Right.
As a pastor and myself.
That's great.
So that, at that period, it kind of took a break in my regular studio painting.
Right, I'm sure.
It did.
Right.
So, but I'm back at that. I've been back at it for quite some time now.
Because I'm sure that work over at Holy Cross was very time consuming.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't small work. So. It was very significant.
I spent 8 months planning and 6 months 6 months actual working. They closed the church, and it was really gutted. It was
Really?
people that have died if they saw it when it was being worked on.
Right.
But the results, I think, were gratifying,
Right.
at least for the most part.
I think every member there appreciates all the work that you did there too. That's tremendous. So,
So
well,
yeah, it's been a pretty good 60 years.
I guess so. Well, it's really been very nice to have you, Harry Breen. Thank you so much for being our artist on Art Now.
You're very welcome.
We appreciate your time. And as I said, you can come here to Techline or go to his website to see more of his work. And we hope that all of you who have watched our program today will be inspired to explore the local art scene and make your own art now.